Okay, let's go.
The birth of a 1941 D. Lincoln wheat penny, a copper dawn in a divided era. In the stillness of a Colorado morning in early 1941, when winter's breath still clung to the far edges of the Rocky Mountains, the Denver Mint stirred awake with a kind of mechanical heartbeat that echoed through the quiet city blocks around it. It was a heartbeat made not of flesh and blood, but of wheels, punches, dies, and steel. Inside this fortress of American industrial pride, a transformation was preparing to unfold. A transformation that would take simple copper planchets and give them a soul, a date, and a story that would endure for generations. And among these millions of forming identities, one coin, a single 1941 D. Lincoln wheat penny, would begin its life quietly, unaware that someday, decades later, collectors would search for it, talk about it, analyze it, and cherish it like a tiny historical relic rescued from the passing of time. The year 1941 was not an ordinary one for the United States. It was a year balanced precariously between peace and war, between the lingering shadow of the Great Depression and the rising thunder of global conflict. Across the Atlantic, Europe was already engulfed in the flames of World War II. Hitler's advance across the continent had set nations scrambling, sending tremors even across oceans. And although America had not yet formally stepped into the war, the pressure, the political tension, and the undeniable pull of global responsibility weighed heavily on the nation. Every factory, every train yard, every smelting furnace, and every mint facility felt this pressure in its own way, including the Denver Mint. To truly understand the birth of a single 1941 D. penny, you must picture the Denver Mint not as a place of cold machines, but as a living, breathing organism, a place where people and metal intertwined. On that morning, the Mint employees filed into the massive stone building, their footsteps echoing through long hallways lined with framed portraits, old Mint photographs, and the ever-present emblem of the United States Treasury. Some workers wore thick gloves for handling machinery. Others wore simple cotton shirts and aprons stained with copper dust. Many of them came from working-class families who still remembered the harsh years of the Depression, years when money was scarce, savings were fragile, and even a single penny carried weight and meaning. The copper used for the 1941 pennies came from shipments brought by rail lines snaking through the Midwest and West. Large barrels filled with copper alloy, technically 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, were unloaded and taken into the Mint's metalworking wing. Inside that cavernous room, the copper was first heated, rolled, flattened, and reshaped into large sheets called strip stock. These sheets gleamed under overhead lights with a reddish-gold hue that seemed almost alive. Every worker who paused to look at them saw both beauty and responsibility. Within those strips lay the millions of coins Americans would soon use for bread, postage stamps, milk bottles, newspapers, bus fares, and little luxuries that made life feel normal in uncertain times. As the copper sheets cooled, they were fed into the blanking presses, towering machines designed to punch perfect round discs out of the metal. But to the Mint workers, these weren't merely discs, they were the unborn. The blanking presses thudded rhythmically, sending vibrations through the floor as each planchet, the technical term for a blank coin disc, was struck free. Thousands of planchets tumbled into metal bins with a sound like cascading rainfall mixed with static electricity, sharp, bright, cutting through the metallic air. Among these thousands lay the planchet that would become our 1941 D. penny. At this stage, it was featureless, a simple copper circle, no different than any other. But fate, timing, and a long chain of events waiting ahead would give a story unique from the rest. For now, though, it simply rested alongside millions of its siblings, waiting to be polished, annealed, and softened before its moment under the coining press. In the annealing furnace room, the heat rose in waves that shimmered the air. Workers used long tools to slide trays, holding thousands of planchets into the roaring ovens. The copper discs glowed faintly as the temperature climbed, not enough to melt them, but enough to ease the hardness left behind by the blanking process. This softening step was crucial. Without it, the final strikes from the dies might not leave sharp details, and the resulting pennies could be shallow, uneven, or flawed. The Denver Mint of 1941 prided itself on quality. The workers knew that every coin leaving those doors represented the American government, the American economy, and the American people. After their time in the furnace, the planchets were cooled slowly, tumbled to remove scale, and washed until their surfaces shone like tiny copper suns. The workers who handled them often joked that these little discs were more polished than their own shoes. And indeed, the pennies at this stage did glimmer with an almost magical brightness. For a brief moment in their early existence, the copper surfaces rivaled a fresh mirror. Once struck, they would darken with age, developing the warm brown or deep red toning that collectors now revere. But in this instant, they were newborn and radiant. Meanwhile, in another section of the Denver Mint, a master engraver and his assistants prepared and inspected the dies that would imprint every 1941 D penny with its design. On one die, the obverse, was the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln. His face, first sculpted by Victor David Brenner decades earlier in 1909, remained solemn and distinguished. His eyes gazed forward with a sense of calm resolve that resonated powerfully in a world on the brink of war. Every wrinkle in his cheek, every fine line in his hair, every contour of his coat collar had been engraved with precision. Around him rested the inscriptions that Americans had come to know so well. Liberty on the left, the date 1941 on the right, and beneath that, the small but significant mint mark D for Denver. The reverse die bore the striking simplicity of the wheat ears design. Two curved stalks of wheat framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, with E pluribus unum arching gracefully above. The wheat ears represented American agriculture, the backbone of the nation, and symbolized prosperity, nourishment, and growth. In 1941, when uncertainty loomed, symbolism mattered deeply. As the dies were mounted into the coining presses, the mint prepared for the next phase, striking the coins. These presses were massive, powerful machines that could stamp thousands of pennies per hour, each strike delivering tons of force. The rhythmic pounding of the coining presses reverberated through the mint like industrial drumbeats. Workers stationed themselves near the presses to monitor feeding tubes and hoppers, ensuring that every planchet entered the press cleanly and every finished penny exited properly without jamming. At last, the planchet destined to become our 1941 D penny approached its defining moment. It rattled down a narrow metal chute, clinking gently against its neighbors. As it reached the feed mechanism, a quick mechanical arm swept into place directly between the upper and lower dies. For a fraction of a second, it lay there, a blank copper circle in the quiet center of a storm. And then, with a sudden, thunderous impact, the press came down. In that instant, the simple planchet ceased to exist. It was reborn as a coin. Copper compressed under immense force, filling every engraved groove of the dies, capturing every detail of Lincoln's portrait and every grain of the wheat stalks. The edges of the coin expanded slightly into the collar, forming its shape perfectly. The sound of the strike rang like a sharp, metallic snap, the sound of new identity being forged. When the press lifted, the coin that remained was no longer anonymous. It carried its year, 1941. It carried its birthplace, the small D mint mark. It carried its values, liberty, Indiana, God we trust, E pluribus unum. And at its very heart, it carried a portrait of a president who symbolized unity during one of the most fractured times in American history. That first breath, that first appearance as a fully formed penny, would define everything that followed for this coin. As it slid from the coining press into a collection bin along with countless other newly struck 1941 D pennies, Its surfaces gleamed with the unmistakable luster that only brand-new copper possesses. This brilliant shine was known in the numismatic world as mint red. Estate coins rarely retain once they enter circulation. But for now, this penny was pristine, untouched, unblemished, sparkling as if lit from within. Workers continued to strike more coins, and the bins gradually filled. When each bin reached capacity, the pennies were pushed to a sorting area where they clattered down metal ramps in streams resembling reddish-gold waterfalls. The sorting machines separated imperfect coins, those with off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, or other mint errors, from those deemed fit for circulation. Only the best pennies passed inspection. Our 1941 D penny passed easily. Its strike was sharp, its details crisp, its surfaces flawless. No weak spots, no die breaks, no doubling, no mechanical issues. It was a model coin, exactly the kind Denver was proud to produce. Eventually, the inspected coins were counted and bagged. Heavy canvas bags stitched with reinforced thread and stamped with black ink reading $1.50, 1 cent. U.S. Mint, Denver, were filled with exactly 5,000 pennies each. The weight of a full bag was substantial, roughly 34 pounds, and the workers who lifted and stacked them knew the heft all too well. Inside one of those bags, surrounded by thousands of its identical siblings, our penny rested in warmth and darkness, unaware of the world it was about to enter. Over the following days, the bags were sealed, loaded onto wooden pallets, and prepared for shipment. By mid-1941, trains were the lifeline of American commerce. Locomotives snaked through the mountains, carrying everything from food and mail to machinery and mint shipments. The bags of pennies from the Denver Mint were no exception. Soon enough, a fresh shipment, including the bag containing our 1941 D penny, was loaded into a freight car. The clanking of metal wheels against rails echoed as the train began its journey eastward and southward, distributing currency to banks, businesses, and federal facilities across the region. Inside the freight car, the bags swayed slightly with the movement of the train. Through narrow cracks in the wooden slats, sunlight flickered like Morse code messages. Our penny, cushioned between thousands of others, experienced its first real journey, the first hints of its long and unpredictable life. Outside the moving train, America passed by in wide, sweeping landscapes. Fields of golden wheat stretched across Kansas, their gentle waves mimicking the wheat stalks engraved on the penny's reverse. Small towns with white-steepled churches and family-owned shops dotted the countryside. Gasoline pumps, old Ford trucks, dusty roads, schoolyards filled with children in cotton clothes. All of these scenes mirrored the world the penny was about to enter. At last, the train reached its distribution point, a regional Federal Reserve branch. Workers unloaded the canvas bags with practiced motions, stacking them alongside bags of nickels, dimes, and quarters. Bank orders from multiple cities awaited fulfillment, and the Denver pennies of 1941 were assigned accordingly. Some bags went to commercial banks in Denver. Others went to New Mexico, Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, and beyond. And one bag, the one holding our coin, was forwarded to a bustling bank branch in a mid-sized Colorado town, known for its mining roots and its growing population of shopkeepers, farmers, and factory workers. The bank vaults of that era smelled faintly of oil, paper, ink, and metal. When the bag was slit open and the coins poured into the counting machine, the sound was thunderous. Thousands of pennies flowed together, sliding and bouncing as if eager to begin their new lives. Our penny, gleaming and energetic, tumbled among them until it was scooped and redistributed into smaller rolls. Thick brown paper cylinders holding 50 pennies each. A teller at the bank wrapped a rubber band around each roll, stamped the date on the packaging, and stacked them neatly near her station. Customers filtered in and out, farmers cashing checks, women buying savings bonds, shop owners depositing weekend earnings. And then it happened. A young man, no more than 20 years old, approached the counter. His clothes were neat but modest, his hands rough from field work. He asked the teller for 2 rolls of pennies, He needed change for his father's general store. The teller handed him the rolls, and he slid them into the pocket of his worn canvas jacket without a second thought. Inside one of those rolls, nestled tightly among 49 others, our 1941 D penny waited in anticipation. Its surfaces were still bright, its luster still fiery. It had not yet felt the cool touch of human skin, but that moment was coming soon. The young man pushed open the bank's heavy glass door and stepped into the sunlight. The air smelled faintly of rain and fresh soil. He mounted his bicycle, pedaling down the road toward the general store his family had run for nearly 20 years. On the way, he passed neighbors, waved at children, and glanced briefly at the newspaper headline displayed outside the post office. Europe in turmoil, war expands. He swallowed hard. Like many Americans in 1941, he felt the tremors of conflict even from across the ocean. But right now, in this small Colorado town, life went on. The general store needed supplies, customers needed change, and pennies, even simple ones like the 1941 D he was carrying, were the tiny gears that kept daily life moving. When he arrived at the store, he hopped off the bike, stepped behind the wooden counter, and tore open the first penny roll. Copper coins spilled across the surface, clattering like tiny bells. His fingers brushed over them, counting them into the cash register. And for the very first time, someone touched our penny. The warmth of a human hand awakened it to a new sense of existence. The coin felt the ridges of the young man's fingerprints, the pressure of his thumb, the subtle friction of skin against metal. Then, with a soft slide, he placed it into the cash drawer among nickels, dimes, and quarters. The drawer closed with a heavy click, and the penny's first chapter as a circulating coin truly began. But this was only the beginning. For a coin issued in 1941, in a world on the edge of dramatic change, thousands of miles, hundreds of hands, and countless stories lay ahead. And those stories, layer by layer, would shape the destiny of this little copper witness to American life. A penny enters the American stream of life. The penny rested quietly inside the wooden cash register drawer, surrounded by a mixture of older brown-toned scents and a few bright newcomers like itself. Each time the drawer slid open, it saw flashes of the world beyond. The polished counter, shelves of canned peaches, sacks of flour stacked like bricks of a tiny fortress, and customers drifting in and out carrying the scent of outdoor wind and daily work. Hours passed, and the store rhythm pulsed like a heartbeat. A bell on the door chimed every time someone entered. Coins rang, paper bags rustled, footsteps creaked across oak flooring worn smooth by decades of traffic. Our 1941 D penny began learning the sounds of its new world. The conversations, the laughter, the worries whispered low, the heavy boots of farmers, and the light shoes of children spending pocket money on licorice and marbles. Then, late in the afternoon, the penny's moment of movement arrived. A man with weathered skin and a thick wool coat approached the counter, placing a small bundle of items, a newspaper, 2 candles, and a tin of coffee, in front of the young storekeeper. The storekeeper calculated the total, 27 cents. The man slid coins across the counter, and the storekeeper returned change, including our penny, into his gloved hand. It was subtle, ordinary, uncelebrated. And yet, that moment marked the penny's first transaction, its introduction into circulation. It had crossed the line from new to used, from minted object to living participant in American commerce. The man pocketed the change with a gentle nod and stepped outside. Cold air pricked against his cheeks. Snowflakes had begun drifting, soft and silent, swirling under street lamps that flickered to life early in winter dusk. As he walked down the road toward his farmhouse, the penny jostled inside his pocket among nickels and lint, listening as he hummed an old folk tune. With every step, the world seemed huge and full of unknown destinations. Days passed. The man spent the penny at a hardware shop while buying nails for barn repairs. From there, it traveled into a cigar tin used as a makeshift cash box. A week later, a ranch hand bought a warm drink and received the penny as change, and this simple coin found itself in the hands of someone new again. Time moved like falling snow, slow, silent, inevitable. Winter became spring. The war overseas grew louder. American newspapers grew thicker with unsettling headlines. London bombings, naval clashes, whispers of draft expansion. Yet in this Colorado town, small moments persisted. Families baked bread, couples danced in community halls, and coins like our penny passed hand to hand, unnoticed but essential. The ranch hand who now carried the penny spent long days herding cattle between rolling hills. Every time he finished at the general store or local cafe, he reached into his pocket for payment, and the pennies clinked like tiny chimes. One evening at a diner, after a long shift, he ordered a steaming plate of beef stew and warm cornbread. When paying, he dropped a small handful of coins on the counter, and our penny slid forward, its copper surface still relatively bright despite a month of circulation. The waitress, a teenage girl with a ribbon in her hair, collected the coins. She noticed the date, 1941, new and crisp. She smiled faintly, thinking of her older brother who had just enlisted in the army. She wondered whether coins like this would travel with soldiers overseas someday. She traced Lincoln's profile briefly with her thumb before placing the penny into the register. To her, it was a good luck sign. To the penny, it was another chapter. And so the journey continued. Over the next weeks, the penny flowed through the arteries of the town, from the diner to a movie theater showing black and white newsreels of war updates, from a theater cashier to a school child buying penny candy, from a school child to a bus driver's coin box, from the bus depot to a postal clerk sorting letters sent to loved ones far away. The penny was witnessing real human life. It felt like a tiny witness to history, hearing conversations of fear, hope, love, struggle, laughter, all through the echo of human voices above it. Yet every coin's journey eventually forks. One path ordinary, one remarkable. Our penny's turning point came on a day that seemed normal at first glance. A young boy of about 8 entered the corner candy shop with 3 cents saved from chores. He pressed the coins, including our penny, onto the counter and bought a bright red jawbreaker. The shopkeeper, a man with silver hair and thick glasses, pushed the coins aside. But then, something curious happened. A second customer in line behind the boy noticed the shiny penny sitting atop duller coins. He picked it up, looked at the 1941 D, and said softly, "Brand new, isn't it?" He wasn't just a customer. He was a beginner coin collector. His name was Thomas, a high school student, quiet, observant, fascinated by history. He had recently begun reading books about Lincoln cents and mint marks. The wheat penny series intrigued him, especially pieces from early 1940s. When he saw the bright 1941 D, his collector instinct sparked. He asked the shopkeeper, "Would you mind if I swapped this one for another penny?" The shopkeeper shrugged. A penny was a penny, so Thomas traded one from his pocket, an older brown one, leaving with the 1941 D gleaming in his hand. And just like that, the penny's destiny changed. No longer was it doomed to vanish into endless circulation, worn to brown anonymity. It had found someone who valued it, not for spending power, but for history, curiosity, and preservation. Thomas placed the penny gently inside a small cardboard folder with circular cutouts, labeled by year and mint mark. Many slots were empty. 1909, SVB, 1914, D, 1922 no D, coins rare and costly. But the slot labeled 1941 D was now filled. The penny's copper luster shone with pride. Days turned into months. Spring ripened towards summer. World events grew darker. Whispers of draft calls intensified. Industries began shifting toward wartime production. Radio broadcasts carried tension into American kitchens each evening. Yet inside Thomas's drawer, the penny lived a peaceful life, shielded from wear, aging slowly, retaining its red brilliance. Sometimes Thomas removed it just to admire its sharp wheat stalks and crisp portrait of Lincoln. He imagined the Denver Mint where it was born. He wondered, naively but sincerely, whether coins like this might one day be relics of a world transformed by war. Then came December, a month that would reshape history. Thomas was at home when the news crackled through the radio. Pearl Harbor has been attacked. His mother dropped a dish that shattered across the floor. His father went silent, eyes fixed forward. Neighbors poured into the streets, buzzing with disbelief, anger, fear. The United States was no longer watching the war. It was entering it. For days, conversations everywhere revolved around enlistment, rationing, defense, uncertainty. Factories in America began shifting production toward military needs. Copper, once abundant, suddenly became precious. In the following years, the government would even replace copper pennies with steel to conserve metal for ammunition. But in 1941, our penny had already been struck, in copper, as if carrying the final breath of a peacetime economy. Thomas's older brother enlisted. Before leaving, he visited Thomas's room. He looked through the coin folder, smiling at the collection. "You've got yourself a treasure here," he said softly. Thomas removed the 1941 D penny and pressed it into his brother's palm. "For luck," he whispered. His brother hesitated, then closed his hand around it. That night, as he lay in his bunk, preparing to leave for service training, he held the penny between his fingers, feeling its ridges, imagining the mint, the fields, the country he was about to defend. It was only 1 cent, but it became a promise, a memory, a connection to home. He carried it with him across states, in uniform pockets, on train transports filled with recruits. The penny traveled farther than it ever dreamed. Through army bases, barracks, muddy training fields, rifle ranges echoing with gunfire. It lay warm against dog tags that shimmered under sun. And the war machine rolled forward. The penny now belonged not to a town, but to a soldier. A penny in war, a journey beyond the ordinary. Trains thundered across open plains as winter winds cut through the gaps between cars, rattling steel frames like restless bones. Young men in olive uniforms sat shoulder to shoulder, boots muddy, duffel bags stuffed overhead, letters from home tucked into pockets beside ration books and crumpled photographs. Among them sat Thomas's brother, and inside the smallest pocket of his coat rested the 1941 D wheat penny, wrapped in a scrap of handkerchief like a talisman. He would take it out sometimes when the nights grew long or when fear lingered too heavily. Under dim compartment lights, the copper coin caught glimmers like embers of hope. He would rub it gently between thumb and finger, and for a moment, instead of the uncertainty ahead, he thought of home, of the quiet town, of Thomas sorting coins with studious patience, of their mother humming old hymns while preparing supper, of the old radio that whispered news like a voice from the far shore of reality. The penny listened, silent, small, enduring. At camp, soldiers lined up for drills. Orders barked. Footsteps synchronized like a single mechanical body. The penny bounced inside the soldier's pocket as he ran obstacle courses, practiced rifle formations, wrote hurried letters under flickering lamps. Sometimes he would show the coin to a bunkmate and say, "My kid brother collects these. Gave me this one. For luck." Most nodded with simple understanding. Some even shared stories of trinkets they carried. A silver locket, a torn postcard, a button from a sweetheart's blouse. Tiny things held enormous weight in times when the world felt too big and uncontrollable. Weeks passed. Training hardened into routine. Fear settled into acceptance. Then came deployment orders. Ships crowded the harbor like metal giants ready to cross the dark ocean. The penny was now destined not just for circulation or collection, but for war-torn soil far from its birthplace. On the evening before embarkation, Thomas's brother sat alone near the docks, watching waves rise and collapse like breaths of the earth. He took the penny out again, viewing Lincoln's profile beneath moonlight. The words "In God We Trust" looked more fragile than ever. Not bold declaration, but hopeful prayer. He whispered into the night, "Let me return home with this." The next morning, the ship departed, a floating iron world filled with uncertainty. The penny crossed miles of endless water, hearing gulls cry overhead, feeling the engines churn below. Young soldiers played cards to pass time, laughed loudly to outrun their anxiety, wrote letters they never spoke aloud. One of those nights, a heavy storm struck. Waves smashed against hulls. Metal shrieked. Men struggled to stay upright. The penny slipped from a soldier's pocket and rolled across the deck, striking against boots and crates. He panicked, dropping to his knees, crawling through rain and chaos to find it. Finally, his hand closed around the wet coin. It was irrational, but losing it felt like losing home. He clutched it through the storm until calm returned, and afterward, he stored it carefully inside his shirt, tucked near his dog tag chain. After that night, he never let it sit loosely again. Days passed. Sea became foreign land. Boots hit unfamiliar soil. The air smelled different, like iron, smoke, and damp earth. Orders came quickly. Movement was constant. The penny saw barracks, tents, barges, and bombardments. It heard distant thunder of artillery, like the beating of giants' drums. It felt the trembling of a world breaking. Yet there were moments of warmth, letters delivered, jokes shared over tins of cold beans, soldiers carving names into tree trunks, harmonicas singing under starry skies. In these small human sparks, the penny witnessed resilience, the strange way hope survives even where fear reigns. Then came a day when fate twisted sharply. During a hurried march toward a newly ordered position, explosions rattled the ground. Dirt flew. Shouts filled the air. The soldier stumbled, falling face first into mud. When he scrambled up to continue running, the penny slipped from his shirt and fell unseen into the churned earth. He didn't notice until camp was meters behind. He froze, hands searching for familiar shape gone. He wanted to turn back, but orders were strict. Movement meant survival. Behind him, the field was fading beneath rain and darkness. He knew he might never find it again. He stood there breathless, eyes burning, and whispered, "I am sorry, Tommy." But war does not wait for sorrow. He had to move. The line pushed forward. The penny lay behind, half buried beneath wet soil, watching boots thunder past, hearing chaos echo overhead. Hours later, silence returned. Not peace, but aftermath. The forgotten scent beneath a world at war. Mud pressed against the penny's wheat stalks. Rain washed soil into its rim. Days turned into weeks. The sky changed, but the ground remained the same. Torn, scarred, heavy. Tanks rolled above occasionally, their weight vibrating through soil. But the penny survived, flattened deeper into earth, but never crushed. Winter clenched the land in freezing jaws. Snow fell thick. Soldiers passed. Again months later, different uniforms, different faces, but none noticed the tiny copper artifact beneath their feet. Tom does strange things to memory. Back home, Thomas waited, counting days with restless hope. He often sat staring at the empty 1941 D slot in his folder, tracing its outline with a fingertip. His mother prayed. His father read newspapers silently, jaw tight. Each letter from the front became treasure. Each week, without news, felt like a darkening hallway. He never told anyone, but some nights, Thomas whispered to the empty slot, "Please come back, both of you." The coin that survived nations, time, and memory. The story of a 1941 D. Lincoln wheat penny enters another age. An age where the coin no longer simply exists as a small piece of copper, but as a witness. A witness to war, to changing economies, to hands now turned to dust, and to new generations searching for pieces of history with trembling excitement. Imagine now that same copper disc, minted in Denver in 1941, drifting into the streams of human circulation. Day after day, it passed from palm to palm. Not forced, simply moving with life like a leaf carried by wind. Picture a young boy in the 1950s. America had changed. Victory was celebrated. Soldiers were home. Life was happening again. That boy, perhaps named Michael, ran from his school gate clutching his lunchbox. His pockets jingled. Inside, among shiny new pennies, older wheat cents, maybe worn nickels, lay our 1941 D penny. He didn't know it was special. No one did. To him, money was only a tool to buy a comic book, a soda bottle, maybe a bubble gum pack for 2 cents. The coin tapped against others with soft collisions when he walked. A coin doesn't know it's creating history. It simply exists. Years passed. Michael grew tall. He learned to ride a bicycle, then got a part-time job. But life is like a pocket. Things are taken out, spent, forgotten. The coin was spent at a drugstore counter. The cashier, uninterested, swept loose change into a drawer. There the penny lay in darkness under silver nickels, quarters with Washington's stern gaze, other wheat pennies still common then. Days, months, a decade. It moved, always moving like memory. By the 1960s and early 70s, people had begun to notice wheat cents disappearing. New Lincoln Memorial cents replaced them, their reverses showing the proud building instead of wheat stalks. Old pennies were still accepted, but their era was fading. That same 1941, D penny might have felt the shift. Though, of course, coins don't speak, they hold silence forever. Yet, that silence knows. Wheat pennies found fewer in change, until one day, maybe in 1974, it slid into a glass jar atop someone's shelf. A mason jar, coins thrown casually, forgotten like old keys. There it rested among copper shadows. Time outside changed again. The Vietnam War. The rise of color television. Man stepped on the moon. But the coin didn't see it. It only waited. Coins know patience. They have centuries to remember. Someone found the jar decades later. Perhaps an elderly man cleaning the attic with his grandson. Dust motes danced like snowflakes in beams of warm, golden sunlight. The jar clinked as it was set down. Little hands reached in, curious, pulling out coins one by one. Among Indian heads, 1950 cents, a darker 1917 maybe. And there, sitting slightly worn yet proud, 1941D. The boy turned it under light. Lincoln's face, softened from years of circulation, yet still sharp enough to admire. Wheat ears curving like symbols of harvest, growth, continuity. That one's old, the grandfather might have said. Keep it. Coins like that have stories. And so, our penny avoided melting, avoided abandonment, avoided loss. It was pulled from circulation and spared. Many like it were not. Countless 1941 D pennies were dropped in snow, lost through floorboards, swallowed by vending machines, melted in scrap drives. But this one, the one we follow in imagination, survived because a child decided to keep it. Years later, that child, now grown, might open a drawer and find a small box labeled coins. Inside rests the brown coin, darker now, exposed to oxygen and life. Copper reacts. It turns chocolate brown, sometimes reddish, sometimes nearly black, a patina of age like wrinkles earned with experience. He rolls it between fingers. What did this penny buy? Bread during wartime rationing? Candy in the 50s? Gasoline when it was 20 cents a gallon? The mind begins to wander. Numismatics, the art, passion, and science of coin collecting, is built not only on metal, mintages, and grades, but on emotion. A collector doesn't only own a coin. He owns all the hands that held it before him. Across America, coin dealers begin seeking older wheat pennies, sorting them rapidly across green felt mats under magnifying lamps. Most 1941 D coins are common, yet condition creates value. Those with scratches, dull surfaces, flattened wheat lines, they are one story. But a rare few mint state survivors, bright red, as though time forgot to age them, are treasure. Maybe our penny is not perfect. Maybe it carries light wear. Or maybe it was saved early and still shines with original mint luster. Tiny cartwheels dancing across its surface like flickers of sun through leaves. Consider the grading table at a coin show, glass displays, velvet trays. Collectors walking slowly, hands behind their backs like museum visitors. They lean close, peering through loops. Cases click open. Coins whisper history without speaking. A 1941 D sits inside a plastic slab, graded MS 66RD. Near flawless, glowing like fresh copper fire. The price tag surprises newcomers. How can a simple penny command that value? Because perfection is rarely casual. It requires luck, preservation, care, and time itself as curator. Now move back into our story. A young man, maybe the grandson, visits a coin show for the first time, his childhood jar coin in his pocket. He approaches a table timidly. The dealer smiles, seasoned eyes behind glasses that have stared at more coins than most people ever will. Let's see what you've got, he says gently. The boy places the 1941 D penny on the felt. The dealer lifts it, rotates it under lamplight. He observes the fields, the devices, the condition of wheat lines, the sharpness of Lincoln's profile, the thickness of D mint mark. He checks for die varieties. Could it be AD over DRPM, repunch mint mark? Rare, desirable. Collectors hunt such variations like treasure. Under magnification, the tiny mint mark might look doubled, shadowed, or slightly offset, evidence of hand punching errors at the mint. Small imperfections become valuable markers of history. Maybe the dealer leans back, impressed. You've kept this well, he says. Not worth a fortune, but worth keeping. A piece of America. The boy smiles. Something awakens inside. Not greed, not sale, but connection. He doesn't sell. He takes it home, begins researching other wheat pennies. One coin becomes a hobby. A hobby becomes a passion. Passion becomes a generational story because a small 1941 D survived. The penny now travels no more. It sits in a protective flip or capsule. Safe. Still. Preserved. But in its stillness lives motion, a full life behind it. Factory workers, wartime strangers, candy stores, soda fountains, gas stations, pocket jars, attics, coin shows, childhood palms, old eyes remembering. This is where the coin becomes more than currency. It becomes heritage. Collectors today hold such coins and feel something indescribable, the warmth of history. They know they are temporary caretakers. One day, the coin will move again, maybe 10 years later, maybe 100, into another collection, another story, another heart. The year 1941 is almost a century away now. The children of that era, our grandparents, are gone. Yet this coin continues unchanged. Copper does not age like humans do. It resists time. And so, a new generation opens drawers, finds old wheat cents, searches for dates, varieties, mint marks. YouTube videos discuss rare pennies of thousands of dollars, and everywhere someone asks whisperingly, "Could I have one worth something?" Sometimes they do. 1941 D is common, but perfect specimens glow with breathtaking rarity. Millions survive, but few in top grade. Coins in MS 67, MS 68 are elusive like rare stars. They shine in auctions under spotlights as bidders raise paddles. The room quiets except for voices of determination. The hammer falls. A price is spoken. Applause sometimes breaks. But the true value of a penny is not always measured in dollars, instead in meaning. Because history is not expensive, it's priceless. And thus, part 3 of the story of the 1941 D. Lincoln wheat penny is not about scarcity or metal. It is about presence. It is about a coin that lived through America's most defining century. A humble witness, an unnoticed traveler, a survivor. It rests today in albums, folders, graded slabs, jars, old boxes and closets, kids' coin books bought from hobby stores. Somewhere, perhaps in your house, in a drawer you haven't opened in years, lies another, a penny waiting to tell its story. Think again of that coin, our 1941 D wheat cent, now lying safely in a small protective cover. Years earlier, it was tossed across counters without thought, but now it's cradled delicately, like something fragile yet eternal. The boy who once spent his pocket change on bubble gum now studies coins under bright lamps, his heart beating a little faster whenever he opens his collection box. Funny how a tiny piece of copper can awaken curiosity, discipline, and even life direction. Coins do that. They silently mentor. Maybe he grows up and becomes a historian. Or, the year 1941 is almost a century away now. The children of that era, our grandparents, are gone. Yet this coin continues unchanged. Copper does not age like humans do. It resists time. And so, a new generation opens drawers, finds old wheat cents, searches for dates, varieties, mint marks. YouTube videos discuss rare pennies of thousands of dollars, and everywhere someone asks whisperingly, "Could I have one worth something?" Sometimes they do. 1941 D is common, but perfect specimens glow with breathtaking rarity. Millions survive, but few in top grade. Coins in MS 67, MS 68 are elusive, like rare stars. They shine in auctions under spotlights as bidders raise paddles. The room quiets except for voices of determination. The hammer falls. A price is spoken. Applause sometimes breaks. But the true value of a penny is not always measured in dollars, instead in meaning. Because history is not expensive, it's priceless. And thus, part 3 of the story of the 1941 D. Lincoln Wheat Penny is not about scarcity or metal. It is about presence. It is about a coin that lived through America's most defining century. A humble witness, an unnoticed traveler, a survivor. It rests today in albums, folders, graded slabs, jars, old boxes and closets, kids' coin books bought from hobby stores. Somewhere, perhaps in your house, in a drawer you haven't opened in years, lies another, a penny waiting to tell its story. Think again of that coin, our 1941 D. Wheat cent, now lying safely in a small protective cover. Years earlier, it was tossed across counters without thought, but now it's cradled delicately, like something fragile yet eternal. The boy who once spent his pocket change on bubble gum now studies coins under bright lamps, his heart beating a little faster whenever he opens his collection box. Funny how a tiny piece of copper can awaken curiosity, discipline, and even life direction. Coins do that. They silently mentor. Maybe he grows up and becomes a historian, or a numismatist, or simply keeps collecting for joy. Every collector begins with one coin that speaks louder than the rest. And for him, it was the 1941 D. Decades pass. The world outside keeps changing like weather. The Cold War ends. New technologies emerge. Copper turns to zinc after 1982. Children of a new age grow up, not knowing the weight of old pennies in their pockets. Debit cards and screens replace jingling coins. Something physical becomes digital. Value turns invisible. Yet collectors search more passionately than ever, because as the world becomes modern, people cling tighter to objects that carry the scent of yesterday. Coin shows evolve. Auction houses stream online. A 1941 D penny in high grade becomes a highlight photograph on a website, rotating under digital light, inviting collectors around the world. Comments appear beneath. Lustrous surfaces. Strong strike, beautiful wheat lines. Possibly undergrad, strong MS potential. Collectors speak a separate language, one made of luster, strike, die state, patina, toning, surfaces, cartwheel, fields, devices. A language the 1941 D understands silently, because it was formed in that world, precision, metal, minting, but reborn in another, memory. Imagine a coin grading room. Cool white lamps, microscopes, quiet concentration. Gloves touch coins gently, as though each is a fragile artifact from an archaeological site. A grader examines surfaces for tiny marks invisible to normal eyes. Disturbances made by decades of pockets, friction, life. Some coins bear deep marks like scars. Others remain nearly flawless, saved early, cherished unknowingly. Our particular penny, if fortunate, might be graded MS 65, maybe 66, maybe even red if its copper brilliance survived. A red designation means youth preserved, like seeing copper flame locked inside metal for 80 years. Red-brown speaks of slow aging, peaceful. Brown shows a century of human touch, a coin that lived fully. Collectors debate, which is more beautiful, a blazing red coin frozen in time, or a dark brown penny that clearly traveled through generations of life? There is no wrong answer, only belief. Now imagine something else, a different story. Somewhere right now, in an old wooden dresser in a farmhouse built before electricity, lies a forgotten tin box. Inside, hundreds of wheat pennies. The house smells of timber and rain. A window rattles softly. Dust gathers like snow on history. No one knows the box is there. Maybe the owner passed away long ago, leaving memories and photographs and coins hidden like whispers. Among them, there might be more than one 1941 D. Perhaps a dozen. Perhaps one incredibly well-preserved piece still burning copper red like sunrise. Someone will find it one day. A granddaughter cleaning the house. A metal detector hobbyist exploring the attic. A family member sorting belongings with tears and smiles mixed together. When fingers finally brush that coin, time will breathe again. Coins are tiny time machines. Hold one, and 1941 returns. You hear the clatter of factory floors, the hum of wartime speeches on vintage radios. You smell tobacco shops and bakery dough. You see gas pumps shaped like rockets, men in hats reading newspapers with war headlines, children playing marbles beside sidewalks. A penny brings ghosts to life, not frightening, but familiar, gentle, warm. Think deeper now. Even a mint where it was born stands like a character in the story. Denver Mint, with red brick dignity, machines roaring like mechanical beasts, workers pulling long hours. The nation needed coins. Commerce demanded movement. Every strike was a heartbeat. Every penny a pulse of American life. Our 1941 D was one of many, but not nameless. It had purpose to circulate, to carry value, to serve people. And it did. By the late 20th century, as collectors searched old rolls and bags, most common wheat cents were discovered. Yet gems remained hidden. The rare mint state survivors, locked away unknowingly in books, envelopes, drawers where air never kissed copper long enough to dull it, are the treasures collectors chase. Some people hunt entire weekends through yard sales, flea markets, estate auctions, coin bags just to find one perfect piece. Imagine a retired coin hunter with magnifying glasses strapped to his eyes like a scientist. He sorts through a batch of 5,000 pennies bought in bulk, his fingers stained with decades of copper. Hour after hour, date by date, mint by mint. 1919, 1956, 1934. Then suddenly, a flash of orange-red, untouched luster swirling in circles. He pauses. The world freezes. 1941. Sharp strike. Clean fields. Wheat lines crisp. No major marks. A sleeping gem. His heart beats faster. He breathes carefully, as though afraid to disturb history with one exhale. He holds it under bright lamplight. The coin glows, fire trapped inside copper, preserved like a sunbeam in metal. He has searched thousands of coins to find this one. Hours disappear, but coins reward patience, like ancient temples yielding treasure only to those who persist. Somewhere else, another coin travels a far different path, lost on a muddy battlefield years ago, stepped on by soldiers, soaked by rain. Its surface dark, corroded, wounded. But even that coin has meaning, a relic not of glory, but of sacrifice, of hardship. A war penny. A soldier's last pay, perhaps. Not shiny, but deep. Coins live many lifetimes, some glamorous, others tragic. But each one matters. And now, nearly a century from its birth, the 1941 D penny stands as an ambassador of the past. Young collectors hold them today and wonder, who touched this first? What was America like then? Did someone pocket this coin before leaving for war? The mind travels freely where history leaves footprints. One boy, one coin, one moment, and a lifetime of curiosity unfolds. Some collectors build entire folders of Lincoln wheat pennies from 1909 to 1958. When they finally slide a 1941 D into its tiny cardboard window and press the plastic cover over it, there's satisfaction, a puzzle piece clicked into place, a little victory, a tiny celebration of memory. Others don't store them, they study them. They examine doubling in motto letters, RPM, mint mark varieties, late die states with die cracks running like small lightning marks across the fields. They search for die clash impressions, ghostly outlines of reverse elements pressed faintly onto the obverse from minting pressure. Some coins even carry faint die scratches for polishing, like scars for birth itself. Every tiny imperfection is a signature. There's poetry in that. Coins are like people, each unique, each shaped by time, pressure, circulation, environment. Some age perfectly, some struggle, Some survive mint fresh. Some carry wounds. But all hold stories. The coin you imagine may still live in your own drawer right now. Silent. Waiting. Maybe one day you will open that drawer and see it in a different light. Not as change, but as a storyteller, a survivor, a relic of a world that breathed long before you were born. And when you hold it, may you feel history pulse faintly through its copper surface. For the 1941, D. Lincoln Wheat Penny is not merely a coin. It is a time capsule, a witness, a heritage kept alive by hands like yours. Hidden errors, quiet rarities, and the secret lives of 1941 D. pennies. History is loud. War drums echo, machines roar, speeches ring across radio waves. But the rarest things born of history are often quiet. Hidden, overlooked, like a mint mark slightly doubled. A crack running across the die like a scar. A misaligned strike where Lincoln's profile seems pushed by fate itself. And in the year 1941, when America was biting its lip on the edge of global chaos, thousands of tiny mistakes escaped the Denver Mint. Unnoticed then, priceless now. Picture again that mint floor in Denver, 1941, the year moving like a train gathering speed toward war. Inside, steel dies were changed constantly, worn dies removed, fresh ones installed. But humans work these machines, and humans, though skilled, are imperfect in the most beautiful way. Sometimes a mint mark punch landed twice, not once, just a microscopic shift apart. Sometimes a die polished too aggressively left fine scratches like threads of silver cutting through copper fields. Sometimes pressure struck harder on one side, softer on another. Rare pieces were born quietly like rare stars formed in space, unnoticed until someone looks up. Now imagine that 1941 D coin with a repunched mint mark, RPM. Its D doubled slightly like an echo frozen in metal. A normal spender would never see the difference. A child buying gum in 1947 wouldn't pause. A shop clerk counting change in 1962 wouldn't care. But a collector in 2025 might hold it under a magnifier and feel electricity run down their spine. Because in that doubling lies rarity. Not rarity created by low mintage. No, rarity created by accident. By chance. By human imperfection preserved for almost a century. Think of one such RPM penny journeying through circulation. People spin it, scraped it against countertops, let it sleep with other coins in pockets rubbed by denim and wool. The tiny mint mark mistake slowly wore, edges softened, but the ghost of doubling never died completely. In 1983, maybe a teenager sorting wheat pennies for fun spots something weird about the D. He shrugs, sets it aside in a jar. Decades later, his grandson finds it again, but now the world has changed. Now collectors know. Now information travels like lightning. A YouTube video explains rare 1941 D RPM varieties. The boy watches. His eyes widen. He runs to the drawer, opens the jar, finds that same coin. History awakens. He flips it under a loop. The D splits slightly, like two letters hugging each other. His heart jumps. The coin was once common, now is precious. Not because of metal, but because time revealed its secret. Some 1941. D pennies carry D over D repunching. One punch slightly north, another slightly west. A shadow mint mark peeking like a double reflection. Small, nearly invisible, yet powerful. Imagine thousands of coins struck before the error was noticed and corrected. Imagine how many were lost to time. Spent, worn, melted, discarded. Only a fraction survive in high grade, bright like copper dawn. These are the coins collectors whisper about, the kind placed into velvet trays, handled like museum artifacts. Now shift the scene to a collector's desk in 2020s. Lamplight spills golden across a field of coins. He slides each penny gently, searching for varieties. 1941, D number 1, normal. Number 2, worn, dull. Number 3, nothing special. Number 4, his breath catches. He sees a mint mark split like a tiny fork in the road of history that I in that instant. The room feels different. Quiet. Heavy with discovery. He isn't just looking at metal. He is holding the result of an error made 84 years ago by a worker whose name he will never know. A worker who punched the mint mark twice, maybe tired, maybe rushed. A human moment, frozen in copper forever. Errors are stories. Rarities are memories. Coins are witnesses. Imagine another variety, a die crack like lightning stretching across Lincoln's shoulder. A flaw? No, a fingerprint of age. The cracks grow as dies weaken. Each crack tells of pressure, repetition, exhaustion. Machines that struck millions before failing. Every crack is unique, like wrinkles on a wise face. Some cracks form dramatic shapes, lines through dates, through wheat stalks, through Lincoln's lapel. Collectors call them cracked dies, cuds, breaks, but names don't matter to the coin. What matters is that it lived long enough in the mint to bear scars. Now think of a coin misaligned during strike. The obverse shifted slightly left, the reverse slightly right. The rim thicker on one side, thin on the other. A person buying bread in 1954 never noticed, but a collector today sees character. Or a lamination error. Copper peeling like old paint, exposing the raw soul of the coin. In 1941, the metal supply wasn't perfectly pure. War tightened resources. Impurities slipped into copper sheets. Some pennies flaked, split, cracked at the surface. To some damaged. To collectors, natural art. Coins like these are strange, flawed, yet beautiful, like history itself. Now imagine auctions. A rare RPM, 1941. D in mint state 67 red sits in a clear slab. Lights glow upon its surface. Bidders lean forward. The room holds its breath. $200, $500, $1,200. The auctioneer's voice bounces like heartbeat. The hammer falls. A collector smiles, not because of money, but because he just acquired time. Coins like that do not simply sit in collections. They live in them. Every time someone opens the case, history breathes again. Copper shines like a memory lit from within. Meanwhile, somewhere in a coin roll, sitting in a forgotten bank vault, maybe even now, another RPM hides patiently, waiting for the right hands, waiting to be found, admired, loved. Coins do not rust with loneliness, they endure. Decades mean nothing to metal. And now imagine one last story. In a basement, a man empties his grandfather's old tool chest. Inside he finds a brown leather pouch, tied with fraying string. He opens it. Dozens of wheat pennies spill out. One shines more warmly than the rest. He picks it up, feels weight, turns it under light. The D looks doubled. He doesn't know yet, but something inside him feels a spark. He searches, reads, learns, and slowly realizes the coin he holds is rare. Not rare because of mintage, rare because time chose it to survive differently. He places it gently in a holder, not to sell, to remember, to honor, to pass on, because money is spent, but history is kept. The 1941 D. Lincoln wheat penny is not valuable for copper alone. It is valuable for story, for error, for journey, for survival. Each piece a chapter, each scratch a memory, each variety a secret the mint never meant to share. Coins are history's smallest storytellers. And this one speaks of America, war, workers, children, collectors, loss, discovery, future, legacy, future destiny, and the eternal life of a 1941 D. wheat penny. Time moves like a river, slow to notice at first, but unstoppable. Copper darkens, presidents change, cities rise and fall, but coins remain. Quiet, patient, eternal in a way humans never are. The 1941 D. Lincoln wheat penny, tiny enough to slip under a fingernail, has watched nearly a century unfold without saying a word, yet speaking through presence alone. It is a century folded into a circle, a witness the size of thumb. Imagine it now, sitting inside a collector's cabinet today, the modern world buzzing around it with glowing screens, electric cars whispering down streets, voices traveling through satellites. Children scroll instead of shuffle coins. Yet this little wheat penny still commands attention. People lean over it, their eyes narrowing like archaeologists discovering an ancient artifact. They whisper, they study, they hold it under warm light, and feel something a phone can never replace. Connection, not digital, human, because the coin is older than everyone in the room. Think of its journey ahead. Maybe the collector who owns it now will pass it to their son with a smile, telling him never to sell it. Not because it is worth money, but because it is worth time. A legacy is sometimes measured not in dollars, but in heritage. The boy grows older. He moves houses, grows his own family, and one day takes the same coin out of safe and tells his child the same story. Your great-grandfather kept this during the war years. Don't lose it. In that moment, a copper penny is no longer currency. It becomes memory material, a vessel of family lineage, a symbol of value deeper than metal. Now imagine a different future. Perhaps another collector one day discovers this same penny at an estate sale. He buys a box of old coins for the weight of scrap metal. Unaware, later at home, he sits, sorting pennies one by one, and suddenly sees the wheat reverse. He smiles. Wheat cents always excite collectors. He turns it over. The date 1941 glows faintly through brown patina. Then he sees it, the Denver D. His heart catches slightly. It feels like finding a message in a bottle washed ashore after 80 years. He doesn't sell it. He cleans nothing. He places it in a holder, writes a label. 1941 D. Found on a rainy Friday. Estate box number 4. Coins love being remembered. And then, imagine a museum. A century passes, maybe 2. Currency becomes digital completely. No coins jingle in pockets anymore. Children tap wrist screens to buy candy. Money becomes invisible waves of information. Most people alive have never felt the cold roundness of a penny. But a few historians refuse to forget. They create exhibitions of early American currency. Visitors walk slowly beneath glass cases, reading dates. There it lies. A 1941 Lincoln wheat penny. Small, humble, older than their grandparents' grandparents. A plaque beside it reads, "This coin circulated during the era leading into World War II. Copper touched by millions, yet preserved. A memory of what money once felt like." People stop. Study. Children ask questions. Teachers explain. And the coin continues doing what it has always done best, telling a story without speaking. A century after its birth, it still matters. 2 centuries later, it might matter even more. For value is not only in selling price, though collectors chase that too. Certain 1941 D pennies in high mint state glitter like freshly struck embers, radiant red or red-brown, coins untouched by life's friction. Those in MS 66 or MS 67 red gleam like copper suns. Auction rooms buzz when one arrives. Voices rise. Paddles lift. Not for spending, but for possession of beauty. Someone pays a high price, not for metal, but for the privilege of owning perfection from 1941. A perfect survivor. A century-old gem. Money transforms into memory. Yet beside that expensive gem, another 1941 D sits in a humble jar in a kitchen somewhere, scratched, worn smooth like river stone. Its value in money is tiny, maybe a cent, maybe a few. But its value in memory? Perhaps priceless. It might have been a child's lucky coin. It might have paid for a soldier's last newspaper. It might have been held by someone who is now only a photograph in a wooden frame. Old coins are sometimes the last object a person touches that outlive them. The future is full of these small miracles. Now imagine a small boy, maybe in 2060, who finds a 1941 D penny in his grandfather's drawer and stares as though seeing a relic from another planet. He runs a fingertip over wheat stalks that generations before him recognized instantly, but his friends never have. He holds history without realizing it. His grandfather kneels beside him and says, "That penny is older than the moon landing, older than color television, older than me. Keep it safe." The boy puts it in his pocket like treasure. He grows, perhaps becomes a collector. Perhaps he forgets for years, until one day he finds it again and remembers his grandfather's voice. A penny becomes a portal, a door, a missing heartbeat returned. The legacy grows longer. Coins like these do not disappear. They travel generation to generation like stories whispered at night. A 1941 D penny is a survivor that refuses to die. Copper corrodes eventually, yes, but very slowly, far slower than memory fades in human minds. Umans banish. Coins do not. They remain as echoes of hands long gone. Now picture one more scene. A distant future when someone, maybe not even born yet, opens an old wooden box found in an attic of a crumbling house. Inside, letters yellowed like autumn leaves, photographs curled, and beneath them a coin album. Dust swirls in sunlight like time, made visible. They open the album. The page smells of age. One slot shows a bright brown circle labeled 1947. The person runs their thumb gently across the plastic sleeve. Even without words, they feel it. The life, the travel, the weight of years. Something in that moment connects past to present like two ends of a bridge meeting across time. They take the coin out, hold it to the light. Copper glows like an ember refusing to extinguish. And in that glow lives every chapter. Denver Mint machines striking away in 1941. The war years of ration books and radio news. The boy buying candy. The collector discovering treasure. The family passing heritage. The museum display. The grandson remembering love. All in one coin. This is the destiny of a 1941 D. Lincoln wheat penny. Not merely to exist, but to outlive, outlast, outremember. To travel farther in time than the people who once spent it. To sit quietly, yet speak loudly when held with wonder. To defy forgetfulness. To carry 1941 into whatever year comes next. History is not only in books. Sometimes history sits quietly in the palm of a hand. And when someone closes their fingers around that copper disc, the world softens. Time folds. The past returns as gentle as a memory of childhood. And the coin waits for the next hand, the next story, the next century. Because a penny never dies. It simply continues.